Hello and welcome to another episode of Fishing for Answers. Today I'm here with Aaron Munoz. He is the CISO over at Texas Christian University. Aaron, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Joshua. Thanks for having me on. I've been the CISO at TCU for about 7 going on 8 years now. I've been in cybersecurity about 16 years. Uh, so that's, I guess, what is that? Doing the math now in my head, I should know this. 16 years total at TCU. I'm sorry, 18 years total at TCU.
Wow, that's a
Um,
long time.
yeah, time's flown. I love working there. I love the university. I love the mission of pursuing that, facilitating the mission of teaching and learning. What else about me? I got my undergrad degrees at TCU, computer science, and then for a while I thought about teaching Spanish, so I got a Spanish degree. I did not go that route, obviously. Uh, then I received the MBA in 2016 from TCU with an emphasis in finance.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'd make a Van Wilder joke. So you just never wanted to leave college. So you just stayed there and you just made a career out of it, huh?
Yeah, I actually took an extra year, so it took me 5 years to graduate from undergrad. I feed right into that joke. Yeah.
All right. So how'd you get into cybersecurity?
Gosh, it's interesting. It's not something I planned. It's funny. It's interesting you're asking this. I met with a TCU undergrad a couple of days ago at the bookstore. She's in the business school and she wanted to know about cybersecurity and learning what she can do to get in the field and advance her career, what she should learn, what certifications to pursue. But she asked me the same question, and uh, so after I got my computer science degree, my plan and goal. It's interesting the plans you make at 23 years old, they tend to change in life. But my plan was to be a system admin the rest of my life, and I really enjoyed system administration. Even now, I have an inclination to system administration, spending time in the weeds and the technical weeds. Eventually, I'm not quite sure. I think I just caught a liking. I gravitated towards security, and then in '07, I received my earned the CISSP.
Okay.
I remember back then. I think now the exam length is 4 hours. Back then, it was 6 hours maximum length, and so I remember sitting in that room down in Houston for 6 hours and just feeling spent afterwards. But I earned the CISSP, and I think just in general, I started learning this knowledge that got me into cybersecurity. Um, Eventually, I didn't really advertise it, but eventually my boss, my current CTO, found out that I got the CISSP. Um, the previous CISO, he caught wind of that, so they transferred me gave me the opportunity to transfer to the security group, and there I was off to the races.
That's awesome. Well, it's a great career to be in. I assume then if you liked the technical, did you spend some time in the technical side of security, or did you go straight into administration?
It was more on the technical side initially. I think gosh, I was there 7 years on the technical side before I went into the CISO role. Yeah, so lots of time in vulnerability management, vulnerability scanning, heavy involvement in backups and recovery, disaster recovery, business continuity, um, managing our anti-malware system at that point before it became EDR. Goodness, heavy involvement in penetration tests, remediation there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great story. So, you're the CISO over at TCU. Um, I guess I want to start by just asking maybe a very wide open question, and that is in terms of security awareness and really driving that cultural shift that we're all talking about, but not everybody sees. What are some things that you found in your career that work?
I think consistency is one of the themes I see throughout security awareness that makes it effective. The general idea that for all of us, no matter what subject matter you're speaking about or trying to learn, um, there's not something that we can do, once a year that will help us become experts or even, I would say, proficient. And so with security awareness, I would say it's important to try to have lessons on a regular basis, even quarterly or twice a year at least, if not more frequently. I would say consistency is a big piece that I try to focus on.
Okay. So, I mean, in an ideal world, if you could do it as frequently or as often as you wanted to, what might that look like?
Gosh, I think for me, it would be, I would say every other month or so when it came to either testing or delivering a message, education. Part of the part of the balance, I would say, is respecting people's time and also not inundating them. So when I see groups emailing on a daily basis or even weekly basis with content, it becomes a lot. All of us are very busy professionals, and the workplace can be very intense. And so I try to focus on respecting people's time and also delivering that message with efficiency.
That makes perfect sense. So, to that regard, I have a story from my career that I'm curious what your thoughts are on it. So, when I was, I don't know, fairly young in my cybersecurity career, I had just started managing red teams. I was doing a readout for this hedge fund. I go through their report, and like the first four critical findings in this report are all around human element. People can tailgate in, people click on phishing attacks, people plug in thumb drives, stuff like that. And so we mentioned that there's this issue with the human element, and he says, "Well, I'm already spending an hour a year doing training for my employees, and we're already doing these phishing simulations. What more am I supposed to do? And frankly, I'm not willing to give you more than an hour a year of my employees' time because their time is valuable." And as I got to thinking about it, initially, I'm like, well, if an hour is not working, let's throw more time at it. That seemed to me the logical response. But then as I thought about it more, I realized, what if we broke that 1 hour segment into 1 minute segments and we sent them out to the employees every single week of the year? We're not even at a full hour. We're at 52 minutes of time if we're taking a full minute every single time. And so it just, that was what helped me realize that maybe we were going about it all wrong. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think leading up to this podcast, one of the pieces I was considering is one of the pieces that we do at the university every summer is compliance training, and so um, cybersecurity compliance and security awareness is one of the pieces. But there are a number of other videos. So goodness, that we have to watch. I think it's, if I had to guess, about 8 videos, and that might be 4 or 5 hours of content.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, it's that may be an exaggeration, maybe more like 3.5, but whatever it is, it's
But it
significant.
felt like 4 or 5 hours to you.
Yeah, yeah, and I think one of the pieces I would recommend to security practitioners or anybody doing compliance is having some empathy. And while we're highly invested in cybersecurity and security awareness, it's a piece we're passionate about. We have to understand that not everybody else is, and um, much like these other topics that we have to sit through, it can be just this ongoing drone, this drudgery of watching these videos, clicking through for 30 or 45 minutes. And so, um, honestly, one of the criteria I look at with the security awareness compliance videos is I look for the shortest ones or the shorter ones that are still, still have great content. But I really try to respect people's time and also just know that there's only so much attention span I'm probably going to get in these busy professionals' lives.
Oh, 100%. And I think that there's, well, not I think, there've been a ton of studies that keep finding that people's attention spans are shrinking. And the logical explanation that everyone points at is, well, social media. And it makes sense when you look at our lives, they've really changed. People don't read books anymore or novels. I mean, rarely anyway. They're reading tweets and every bit of the consumption, even from movies, has really gone down to people spending a lot more time on their phones and apps like TikTok and Reels and, YouTube Shorts, all of which are this short form video where it could be a 5-second video, or a 1-minute video, but it's certainly not the longer links that we were used to back in the day. And I think that's just the availability of media and everybody being able to easily create videos. It's not like it used to be where these sorts of things were a little bit more difficult. Now this technology is in everyone's fingertips, and with AI, it's only making that so much worse.
Mhm.
So you mentioned empathy, and I think that brings up a really good topic of the argument of carrot versus stick. So I mean, so often I hear people argue for the stick, and I'm curious, what is your opinion? If you could only pick one of these two, which would it be and why?
Yeah, I think one of the concepts that comes to mind is this topic that I learned about in graduate school, but the ideas of extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. And with the carrot and the stick, I align the carrot with intrinsic motivation, the stick with extrinsic. The general idea, I think, is that with the stick, with with penalties and punishment, you can very much motivate people to do something right now, and you do it quickly. The challenge with that, though, is I think you burn through goodwill, political capital there. Um, you burn through human capital there, and you might get them to move right now, but over time, you're going to lose that. Usually, you're going to lose your customer base, your staff, your employees. Um, it's going to be. I think the buy-in will be because they have to versus because they want to, and so um,
Yeah.
I
Well,
think the
and I
punitive
think.
measure.
Oh, continue.
Oh, I just think that punitive measures result in a short-term, quick result, but it's not something that's long-lasting.
I'm right there with you. I agree. I think that the short term or the mandatory just isn't effective. And it's funny that you mentioned the intrinsic, internal, external sort of sense of I guess drive. And that study that the original study that sort of found or that really made that topic popular was with these children in school, and they had different groups, and so they would give them these difficult or these puzzles to solve the first day. And with half of them, when they would solve the puzzle, they would say, wow, you must be really smart. You were able to solve that really fast. And then the other half, they said, wow, you must have worked really hard to be able to solve this. And what was interesting, and I'm hoping I'm quoting this, I guess referencing this accurately. But what was interesting was that the next day, when given the choice between a hard or an easy puzzle, the kids that were told, "Hey, you must have worked really hard," actually were more likely to choose the hard, difficult puzzle. Whereas the kids that were told, "Hey, you must be really smart," were more likely to choose the easy puzzle. And the logic behind it was that because of the kids that were told they worked hard, it was validated the effort that they put in there. They were more likely to want to put it in again. Whereas when they were told they're intelligent, that's something outside of their control, so they were less likely to
Mhm.
wanna put in that effort. But yeah, just a fascinating study, around that. And I agree, I think if you force people to do things, they may go through the motions, but how much do they actually remember in the first place? And I know myself, I got an opportunity to work for the federal government, and when I was there doing my annual security awareness training that would come up and, hit my desk every, once a year. Actually, it felt like it was more like every 6 months, but regardless of the frequency, I wouldn't really pay attention to the words, what it was saying, because most of the questions were about, this statute, paragraph 3 of this, piece of law states what about cybersecurity. And I knew that in the system, I could just click back and just, if I got the question wrong or the answer wrong, I could just answer as many times as I needed to get it right. And I would just do that to blow through the training as quickly as I could. And they had their reports for the auditors that I had done the training, but I had almost zero retention on the law that they wanted me to learn. My takeaway was, oh, don't hack the government computers. Okay. But except for, the irony of that was my job was to hack government computers. But that was sanctioned. So but no, I think when people are motivated and they understand why, that makes all the difference in the world. And I think that why is really important. Um, what's your thought on the why, if you will?
Sure. I think one piece of the why question is, why does this matter to me, and why does this apply to me? Um, I think one piece I would say, you know, I, one piece I would say that hopefully I'm not taking this on a tangent, but just the idea of, I think some very effective security awareness training can be whenever it's targeted on a department or a group basis. And so, why would they care? And I think one example would be, um, I like giving security awareness training to our finance team, mainly because I know they're high value targets and they'll be targeted. But also, what I share with them is how they're going to be targeted, most likely, and what they can look for. And so, the general idea is, I would say that answers the why question, versus having maybe a broad just spectrum of, okay, all these security threats. Here's what's going to be targeted at finance. Here's what you should be aware of. Here's how it might affect you. Here's how you might fraudulently transfer or make a wire transfer to a fraudulent bank account. And so,
Yeah.
um, I think
And
how does
just
it?
educating them that it's not just us that have to worry about our security. It's our vendor security that matters too, and how that can hit you. Um, no, I couldn't agree more. And in fact, there was this study that found that when you make training contextual to the person's role, that it's 15 times more effective.
Oh wow.
Because it's not just, hey, you need to be secure because of whatever. It's, hey, listen, you need to be aware of this threat targeting people just like you in your role. That's a very different thing to an employee because one's this anonymous threat that's never going to hit them. Another one is something that's targeting them personally. I think the other part of why, though, is making it personal. One of the tips that I heard that I've brought into all of the training that I do, and I forget even who I heard this tip from, and I'm gonna have to go back and find out who so I can give them credit for it because this was just really great advice. But it was make them a teacher at home. So send them
Mhm.
home with the tools. You talk to them about, whatever it is, and then you say, now go talk to your parents about this, or go talk to your children about this. And once you give them the tools and they take them home and they train their family, they actually become the expert at home. And it changes their mindset around it, and just gets them to be more involved and more active. And I just think it's a brilliant concept. If they're training, it forces them to be the expert, and it's like this
Mhm.
just little psychological hack. But to me, I think that's what we should be working on in terms of the threat of social engineering is how do we use social engineering for good? How do we use proven behavioral science
Mhm.
tactics and apply it to cybersecurity to get better results?
Yeah, I know. Gosh, one of the role-based training pieces. I'll go back to the finance piece here in a second, but we as in my security team will give security awareness training to new employees. So
Yeah.
the second day of new employee orientation at TCU, we'll show up and in person and speak with them for about 10 minutes. But one thing I like about that is that I'm able to share an anecdote from TCU where 7 or 8 years ago we had somebody on their second day at work, much like these folks we're visiting with. Uh, they were on their second day of work, but they opened up a malicious email, opened up a malicious attachment, a Word document, and downloaded ransomware. through this email. And so this person who was on their second day of work managed to get their department infected with ransomware. And so it's a great lesson or a great opportunity for me to share. Okay, you're only on day two, which it seems very new. It's very casual, or not casual, but it's like you're just getting your feet wet,
Yeah,
but you're
you
already
shouldn't have to worry about being attacked yet,
right. You shouldn't have
except for
to be.
the reality is they do. The second they
Mhm,
update LinkedIn, they're being targeted.
mhm.
So did
Right.
you use that as, like, an opportunity to train the rest of the organization or, how what came from that?
Gosh, that goodness, uh, it resulted honestly in more budget for EDR software, just more budget to shore up
Well,
the
that's a win.
yeah. And I think uh, one of the recommendations I have to security practitioners is just the idea that it's good for us to use these phishing emails or security incidents as opportunities. And so, obviously, there's a downside to a security incident, but what can we, how can we use it as an opportunity? And so, with
Well, I
phishing email, oh, go ahead.
no, no, continue. All I was just gonna echo, yeah, I mean, I think anytime you have an incident, there has to be that postmortem of it.
Right, right. And so, specifically with regard to phishing, one thing we do with any kind of successful phishing attack is we try to follow up with an email to campus, basically, taking screenshots of that phishing email, highlighting, okay, that here's the sender's, sending email address. Here's the text. Here's what you should have looked out for. Here's why it's malicious. Here's what how you can be more secure in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So, what are some other roles that you're looking at? You've named finance, but I imagine there's some other roles that you're concerned about as well, while we're on the topic of role-based training.
Sure, goodness. I know one role, it's obviously specific to higher ed or education, but is that of students, and so um, it can be harder for us to reach them because we don't have a presence at new student orientation right now. But students are targeted typically with scams that, yeah, target poor college students. Students who when you're in college, at least most of us don't have much extra money, and so they'll be targeted with scams for fake job offers. And yeah, we've had at least a couple of students fall for them and lose some money on that, which is painful to see. But we try to keep them up to date on potential scams and what to look out for. I try to educate our faculty on those scams and what their students may be targeted with, and with the goal of maybe having the faculty just be aware and helping these students out in case they catch wind of any of these scams.
I had a student, I actually think she was from Texas, although I don't think it was your school. But regardless, she had reached out because her and her entire friend group, they had all been targeted by a scam. They had all fallen for the same scam. And her takeaway was that we've got to normalize admitting and telling people when you fell for this, because if the first person that had fallen for it had just told everybody else, their friends wouldn't have fallen for that exact same scam with the exact same scammer. I mean, there wasn't even any change of details to where it would have made it difficult for them to identify it. Tried to ever come on the show and talk about it, but I wasn't able to make that happen. But I still think that that's a really good example. And I think that's why we've got to be training people when they're very young. I think even before they make it to college, we should have this starting in second grade. Listen, you're gonna get on your games later today, and there's people out there that are out there to get you. Understand who's online and what type of people you're going to be interacting with. Because it is, I mean, I see younger than second grade using devices and online. And so, they can fall victim at a very young age. I think that's
Mhm,
something that some people don't necessarily think of as just how bad the scammers have gotten and how immoral they are. I mean, it's one thing to maybe target somebody who has more than enough, but They're not. They're targeting the elderly, and they're targeting, children or teenagers, and basically in high school, or not necessarily teenagers in high school, but young adults in college. So it is bad, and it's not just that. There's the romance scams where they, convince somebody that they've fallen in love just to get their money, and
Mhm.
so yeah, no, it's crazy just how bad and how ruthless some of these scams are.
Tying back
So, go
oh,
ahead.
tying back to a point you mentioned earlier about taking the lessons and teaching your family, teaching your friends, your children. Um, I'm fortunate that my parents are they're skeptical individuals where, they think just in general by their nature, they like to, they'll question. And so I don't have to worry about them as much when it comes to these scams. But yeah, it's so important to make sure, your family, I try to, share a few things with my parents. Sometimes I'll certainly annoy them by getting their devices out and patching them for them, installing updates. But yeah, I try to keep an eye out for them and watch out for them. But it's concerning just seeing how everybody's targeted. Anybody who's using a device, you're going to be a target.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's true. The internet has redrawn the battlefield lines, if you will. And now that battlefield is in your living room and it's on your tablet, it's on your smart fridge. I mean, like there was actually a story, I don't know, like a year or so ago about smart fridges that had been hacked and were being used for mining. And that was
Oh,
also a plot and what is that? Silicon Valley, that show, that was a plot on one episode, but then it became reality. It's probably where the hacker got the idea, honestly. But no, anything that's connected can become a target. And
mhm,
that's not just technical, that's also the people as well. And I might add that that AI understand psychology pretty well and how to utilize and exploit it. I can go to an AI right now and say, write an email that appeals to whatever bias, whether it's authority or maybe it's urgency or whatever bias that I want to, and it'll very quickly pump something out that's very good, very effective. So to that, what are you seeing in terms of AI driven attacks?
gosh, I know. Gosh, AI. Our concern right now at TCU is really getting our hands wrapped around it and having governance around it. Um, I know one of the pieces I'm most concerned about is the use of LLMs and just getting education out there on just in general that I caution people don't upload confidential or private data into these things. Um, I went to Black Hat USA, the conference in Las Vegas in August 2024. I sat through a session with security researchers from Wiz, and they demonstrated that they were able to break into three LLMs. I think one hosted by SAP, one that was a Hugging Face LLM, and then I forget the third entity. But effectively, they demonstrated that they were able to extract confidential data from what were supposed to be private instances of LLMs. And so, right now, that's my biggest concern, and just really just a lack of guardrails out there that prevent people from uploading confidential data to these things.
Well, I mean, it's not even just the confidential data, it's getting that data out. So maybe you want that confidential data in there, but you don't want the janitor to have the same level of access as the CEO. And even that alone, there's not really good guardrails around things like that. So I mean, I would think all of AI right now has issues in terms of cybersecurity that we're going to have to get addressed. I'm right there with you. I also think that to your part about the confidential information, that the average user does not understand AI other than, hey, it can help make my life easier, and that it's smart. But they don't understand that often the data, their queries, whatever they feed into it, is actually being used to train it as well. And that's the other thing. And if you just say no, well, you can't use AI, they're just going to use it on their phone or somewhere else. So, it is something that I think is partially education, and part tools. But I don't think it's going to be just one or the other. I think it's a little bit of a hybrid. What do you think? I mean, have you done any education around AI yet for your user base?
Yeah, it's been, I would say the education I've really given has been through just requests from various stakeholders on campus, as far as staff and academics, faculty. But really, it's been whenever I receive a contract for an AI component. I just did this yesterday. We have our LMS is starting to use AI as of, I believe, middle of last year. And so I reached out to the faculty running this LMS, and I let her know, here looks like it's using AI now, specifically an LLM. Um, be cautious with the data you feed into this. And my challenge is just with the proliferation of systems. I'm not a subject matter expert on this LMS, and so it's a challenge trying to understand how do I put guardrails around this, or provide protection. The best I can do right now is provide guidance on, please watch out for this. They do have a mechanism for disabling AI and disabling LLM per class or per course. But other than that, my really what I'm doing right now is education and guidance. The same I would say goes with other contracts where contracts for something related to AI will come in, and so it's my opportunity there to provide education to the requester.
Okay.
I know, a little bit of a tangent, but I think this speaks to what's causing the challenge for security practitioners, or at least part of it. I received just some feedback from an MBA student who said that an AI company presented their software to the MBA class. Apparently, in the class, the staff member who told me about this mentioned, okay, well, or asked a question: what security guardrails do you have in place? What security controls do you have in place? And of course, this is an anecdote, but apparently the CEO uh, turned it back on her, basically saying, effectively quashing her question and saying, we don't need to worry about that so much, and effectively downplaying her concerns. And so I think the challenge right now is that there's so much of an impetus for a speed to market for, from companies selling AI products. They want to get, first to market, but that's putting us on on the security side, in the back seat, trying to figure out how do we get our hands around this thing and get control of this.
Oh, I agree, and I think it's compounded by the fact that, I mean, you hear it on CNBC every day. They're talking about how software companies are moving at rates they've never been able to move before with the use of AI without having to grow their staff. And so, the other problem that just amplifies it is that AI is helping to push that movement, which means that it's not a human writing the code. It's a human supervising the code, helping to make sure it's working, but not necessarily looking at every line. And so, I think with it, a lot of opportunities, but right now we're going backwards. It's almost like IoT. So when Internet of Things blew up, there was no security anywhere. And it took us years to get the vendors to start putting security into things. And I think AI is going to end up being the exact same way, where it's the better part of a decade before anyone really takes security seriously. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't know. That's how it went down last time. What do you think?
Yeah, gosh, I'm so I've been in the middle of writing a book, and part of what I'm writing about is just really an introduction to AI and AI security. But during that writing, I did some research, and I do see some companies out there that do provide AI security, or tools for AI security.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're very much first generation, and
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm not sure who are leaders, or who's legitimate, who's not. But I
Well,
suspect you're
and
right.
how do
Where
you
it's
make it work with just any large language model too? So,
right. Yeah, I suspect the maturity is very early. I'm sure it's these tools are very immature right now.
yeah. Yeah. 100%. So we are running low on time. Before we wrap, do you have any just best practices that you would recommend to our listeners in terms of building a security aware culture?
Gosh, I would focus on the people. I think instilling a culture of security awareness is very important, and so I think trying to get your people whenever they first come in the door, whenever they're hired, or education's case when your students are coming in, presenting to them security awareness, giving them an introduction to it, and then periodically on on a regular basis, whether it's quarterly or every other month, try to give them a tidbit, um, a tidbit of security awareness. Use, of course, those opportunities of security incidents, phishing email, any kind of um, especially successful attacks. Use those as your opportunity to maybe catch their attention, and then provide that key lesson right there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think those are any opportunity to mention security and keep it front of mind is great. And I really think that's how you drive that culture change at the end of the day is making sure that security is constantly front of mind. And if people think about it long enough, it just becomes second nature. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. With that, thank you everybody for joining in. We will see you actually later today for another episode of Fishing for Answers.
Thank you for having me, Joshua. I appreciate it.